No lossless sound quality, no Adobe Atmos spatial audio, no DJ mixes, and until very recently, no music videos. But now Spotify has podcasts, audiobooks, and even courses. Spotify is going through an identity crisis, and it's causing them to fall behind their competition. Welcome to Boredom. We are going to cover why Spotify is quickly becoming outdated. In 2008, Spotify pioneered music streaming as a means of tackling music privacy that was prominent in the industry at the time. From sites like the Pirate Bay and LimeWire, it came onto the scene with its alluring offer of free, high-quality music and has built a very large user base in the last 16 years, totaling 615 million as of March 2024, and has come to dominate the music industry. Looking at stats like this, you may think Spotify has nothing to worry about. It has a near monopoly, but you would be wrong. Spotify has much to worry about. Its three biggest competitors are among the largest companies on the planet, and music streaming is not even their core business, unlike Spotify. To add to this, most of Spotify's users are on the free tier, 388 million free users to 239 million paying users, which is one of the biggest reasons Spotify has never turned a profit. Spotify, despite its large market share, is a small fish in a big pond. It needs to really think outside the box in order to compete and stay ahead of its big tech rivals. This has led to a questionable change in direction for the service that sees it departing from its core offering in a multi-billion-dollar blunder. Just like any other streaming service, Spotify follows a subscription model that allows users unlimited access to their music catalogue. Though, unlike streaming services in other mediums like TV and film, Spotify does not have a unique offering in terms of the content itself. All music streaming platforms offer all access to all available music. There are no Spotify originals, at least when it comes to music, so it has to find another means of differentiating itself. This is where, somewhat understandably, Spotify's top brass decided to diversify their audio-based offerings, such as podcasts and later audiobooks, the vision being that Spotify would become the ultimate all-in-one audio platform. This sounds like a win-win on paper. Users get to go to a single place for all their audio needs and get more value out of their subscription with 15 hours of audiobooks added to the unlimited music they get. And Spotify can keep users on the platform longer, as well as entice new users to join from other music-only platforms, not offering the same perceived benefits. However, this leads to feature bloat, where a product tries to become a jack of all trades and master of none, packing too many bells and whistles, trying to solve too many user problems, quote-unquote, at once. Problems being in quotes, as I believe they're creating problems out of thin air rather than trying to solve real problems like bringing support for high fidelity or hi-fi audio and spatial audio. These new music features took a backseat so that Spotify could prioritize new features for its podcasts and audiobooks. Hi-fi music on Spotify was announced years ago with still no launch date site. Meanwhile, its competitors such as Tidal, Apple and Amazon Music have surpassed Spotify by supporting high fidelity audio and have been doing so for years, as well as other modern music features such as spatial audio. Of course, you could argue that a large number of Spotify users don't care about hi-fi audio, other than the devout audiophiles. On the top of that, most listeners nowadays use Bluetooth headphones, which do not support hi-fi or lossless audio anyway. Plus, you would be right to point out that, historically, Spotify has had the best recommendations for new music and the best playlists. But things have changed now in 2024, and Spotify is falling asleep at the wheel of churning out new music features, and it's proving to be a very costly mistake. Back in February of 2021, Spotify announced that it would be introducing high-fidelity audio for its music by the end of that year. It's now July 2024, and Spotify Hi-Fi still remains a broken promise, with no news of when it will finally drop. But what is hi-fi audio, and more importantly, why should you care? Well, way back in the year of 1877, a man named Thomas Edison invented the phonograph, which was the first device that was able to record and play back sound. It used a thin sheet of metal, like tinfoil, to record the audio onto by helically grooved cylinder mounted on a corresponding threaded rod, supported by plain and threaded bearings. While the cylinder was rotated and slowly progressed along its axis, the airborne sound vibrated a diaphragm connected to a stylus that indented the foil onto the cylinder's groove, thereby recording the vibrations as hill and dale variations of the depth of the indentation, creating sound. It sounded like this.
I am the Edison phonograph, created by the great wizard of the New World to delight those who would have melody or be amused.
Fairly low fidelity, as you can tell, and a painstaking method to have to go through just to hear your Sabrina Carpenter tracks. But man's quest has always been to capture as much sonic detail as possible to regurgitate back into your ears in all its beauty, so the art can be heard as the artist intended. Thus we push forward the veil of ignorance into the electrical recording era of the 1920s up to 1940. It was around this time when the term high fidelity was first coined, mainly by manufacturers wanting to differentiate their better sounding products from the competition. Hard not to draw parallels to today with Apple Music versus Spotify. The introduction of microphones and electrical amplification in the 1920s improved audio clarity and was able to capture a wider frequency range. But this was still limited compared to live sound, and surface noise like the crackle you heard in the audio clip was still a big issue. Enter the vinyl era of 1948 to the 70s. Now audiophiles are starting to get nostalgic. Most vinyls allowed for very high fidelity audio playback if well mastered and played on good equipment, to the point where the technology was catching up with the biological limits of the human ear, making somewhat of a ceiling in terms of audio clarity and range. The average human ear has a frequency range of around 20 Hz at the bottom end where the sub-bass sits, and the frequencies you hear in the smoking area of a nightclub. Through the mid-range where most of the music itself sits, to around 20,000 Hz at the high end for things like hi-hats. Of course, this range varies by age and other factors, where hearing can deteriorate over time, but these figures are mostly the accepted band. Well-mixed music will allow breathing space for all those frequencies, as to not clash and cause wave cancellation where two sounds cancel each other out, dimming the overall sound to the point of complete silence for that frequency. To prevent this, music producers would equalize various audio stems, like trimming the bass when the kick drum is making a sound. Otherwise, the frequencies from each will clash, causing the bass frequencies to sound muddy and diminished. Anyways, why vinyl is not used today, at least other than those who collect them as a hobby, is mainly due to physical limitations of the disc, which was highly susceptible to degradation over time, causing greater surface noise or vinyl crackle, and they weren't very portable. You could not play a vinyl in a car, for instance, like you would a CD. From here, the following physical formats generally supported very high fidelity. Like the CD, covered the full range of human hearing, or what is known as CD quality lossless, which on Apple Music is a step above the bass lossless format. However, with the advent of digital audio, with products like the iPod paired with iTunes, we took a greater leap forward in terms of carrying your entire music collection around with you anywhere you go, but a step backwards in terms of music fidelity. This was just a brief run through of the history of music recording. I plan to make a longer, more in-depth video on this topic, so make sure you like this video and let me know if you'll be interested, and subscribe and hit the notification bell to be the first to know when it drops. To put fidelity into numerical terms, we can look at the bit rate for a particular format. This is essentially the data transfer per unit time, like a second. So the higher the bitrate, the higher the fidelity. Spotify's bitrate sits at 160 kilobytes per second to 320 kilobytes per second at higher quality, but most users will probably set their downloads to the standard 160 kilobytes per second to save on storage, whereas a CD's bitrate is 1411 kilobytes per second. Apple Music, since the days of iTunes, has used their own compression format called Advanced Audio Codec, or AAC, that in their words delivers audio that's virtually indistinguishable from the original studio recording. This is just their standard format, however. They also have their own lossless compression format, Apple Lossless Audio Codec, ALAC, with a bitrate in a range of 400 to 1000 kilobytes per second, CD quality lossless, good enough for most ears, to an insane 4608 to 9216 kilobytes per second, more than you would ever possibly need. You may be thinking this is great and all, but most people use Bluetooth headphones and speakers which are lossy, so ALAC is rendered useless in most scenarios, and you would be right. However, Apple has thought of this too and created Apple Digital Masters that, paired with the standard AAC format, allows for a listening experience that is virtually indistinguishable from lossless, especially without the ear training a record producer would have. All this translates into the listener being able to distinguish between the various stems and instruments playing at the different frequencies. allowing for a more clear, high-definition experience. This difference is made apparent when listening to the same song on Spotify and then going to listen to it on Apple Music through a pair of AirPods. Apple knows it can't achieve lossless through Bluetooth, so Apple has found other technical solutions like digital masters and spatial audio to help enrich the listening experience. To remove all the technical mumbo-jumbo, Apple Music does a lot more to help make you feel inside the music rather than it just being a background noise to your life. Spatial audio helps a lot here. It brings the music into the third dimension. Monophonic audio was when no matter what direction the speakers were in, like both your left and right headphone, they would play the exact same sound. Most audio you would listen to is stereophonic, meaning there are two channels of audio for each left and right, adding a second dimension to the music and giving the artist another tool for expressing their art. Spatial audio takes this a step further into the third dimension. You can hear greater detail with instrument arrangements like hearing above, below and behind, almost like you were in the middle of a live band. However, for the sake of brevity, spatial audio is not perfect. There are some louder, heavier genres where spatial audio unfortunately falls flat, like with rock and metal. Thankfully, you can switch off spatial audio in Apple Music, but it is a bit of a pain as you have to do it via the settings app. I do wish they would add a toggle into the player itself for this. Spotify's audio, on the other hand, is very standard. Not bad, but nothing extraordinary. Most people can settle for good enough. Most literally do. But personally, I find a lack of risk-taking on new features, or at least a lack of risk-taking on the right new features, i.e. music, to be a bit frustrating as someone who's been on their platform for nearly a decade. And Spotify's ventures into these new product categories such as podcasts are not even paying off. They have lost most of their exclusive content and did not allow them to escape the iron fist of the music labels, finally turning them into a profitable company years after they first rolled the dice on podcasts. And they seem to be repeating the same mistake with audiobooks and courses. There is a reason why Apple moved away from the iTunes model of having all your media in a single app. It just adds bloat and complexity to the user experience, and it's just bad optimization. While the listening experience and a dedicated music app are the main reasons I switched to Apple Music, there are other reasons too. Music videos. This was a gaping black hole in the Spotify offering for a very long time. Yes, it has had pseudo videos with the 10-second loops in the background of the player, but it was not the same thing. I genuinely thought that when they signed the podcast deal with Joe Rogan and Spotify built in the infrastructure to support video back in 2020, music videos were on the horizon, but I was wrong. Music videos are finally here now in 2024, but personally I feel this is too little, too late. Apple Music and YouTube Music have both supported music videos for years and both offer playlists specifically for music videos. Sadly, I realised that most people do not care about music videos, which is why Spotify has remained so popular despite not offering them until recently. But I feel that music videos should be the other half of the music streaming offering by default. A lot of music videos are very creative and follow a storyline, adding to the overall appreciation of the art of the song. I get that impression of Apple Music overall, that ever since the Steve Jobs iTunes era, Apple respects and cares a lot more about the art it gives a platform to, and this is reflected in Apple Music, with its radio shows and artist interviews, its Apple Music live events and DJ mixes. I don't see anything like that come from Spotify. I feel like Spotify purely sees itself as a means to an end and nothing more, and those at Spotify, while they still likely care about music, aren't quite as artfully minded as Apple. I see them as more technology-led individuals, like most other tech firms, in fairness, where having the best algorithms is valued above everything else. While this is certainly still valuable for music discovery and adds to the experience, I still think it misses a lot of what makes the music itself so special. Learning about the artist behind the art, experiencing a new dimension of audio with spatial audio, and being able to watch music videos that can be as visually creative as the music is audibly, is all part of the overall package. I believe is what makes a great music streaming service. For too long, Spotify has just not put enough of its focus on its core offering to keep me as a paying subscriber, and I have a strong feeling that if they continue on their current path, I think they will lose a lot more of their paying users to its competitors. Perhaps not enough to sink them, but still a considerable amount to its competition, losing a lot of its market share. These are just my thoughts, however. Feel free to let me know if you agree or disagree down in the comments. If you're interested in finding out more about the topic of Spotify's likely failure on delivering on its grand strategy of moving into other forms of audio, then be sure to check out Polymath's recent video, It's Good. I'll link it in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. I'm still fresh to YouTube and I plan to make more content with my thoughts on technology in the future, so be sure to tap the bell to be notified when I post new content. Cheers.